Okay, mamas and dads hiding in the minivan for 5 minutes of peace. Today's guest probably needs no introduction, but I'm going to give her one anyway because she's that legendary. Debbie Reber is the founder of Tilt Parenting, host of a top-ranked parenting podcast, and the author of the Parenting Bible so many of us have underlined, dog-eared, and maybe even cried over. Differently Wired. If you've ever felt like the parenting books at Target forgot families like ours, the ones raising kids who zig when the world zags, Debbie's been the voice saying, "Nope, you're not alone, and your kid is more than okay." She has built an entire movement around raising and celebrating differently wired kids, which means she gets it in a way few experts do. And here's the part you don't want to miss. Stick around until the end because we're going to tell you how you can actually read Debbie's famous book with her in a book club. Yes, the author herself walking through the chapters with you. Consider this your ADHD friendly Cliff Notes with the woman who wrote the thing. So buckle up, refill the coffee, and let's dive in with Debbie Reber. Debbie, welcome to Chaos and Caffeine.
Hi, Danielle. Thanks for having me.
I am going to try my best to not fangirl all over you for 45 minutes and actually have an interview because for those that may be new to ADHD parenting, would you mind explaining to them who you are and not the humble version?
I can't promise the last part, but I will say that, yeah, so my name is Debbie Reber. I am the founder of Tilt Parenting, which I created almost 10 years ago now as kind of a home base for parents raising neurodivergent kids because I am such a parent. And when I first started on this journey, which was now, my kiddo's 21. So when I first started getting feedback that, oh, this is a different path. Oh, there's something going on here. There just really wasn't much helpful. I mean, maybe somewhat helpful, but it was confusing. It was very pessimistic. It was kind of like glass half empty kind of a feel. And I just wasn't really down for that. And so I ultimately created a resource for parents who are raising complex kids like me so they could feel seen, but also realize their kids aren't broken. So that's what I've been doing. And before that, I worked in kids television, and I've been writing books for many years as well. And yeah, I kind of created the job, my favorite job of all the jobs I've ever had.
Oh, I love that so much. Thank you for that.
Sure.
So I guess you kind of already covered it a little bit, but when you were first into ADHD parenting, it does seem like, okay, we have all of these things that we're going to have to work on and weighing you down. What made you want to shift and focus on the strengths based?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was such a challenging time because I was I didn't know what I was doing. I had never raised a child before. And I had a lot of information and I'm a really good problem solver and I'm like good at like figuring things out. My husband and I were very intentional. We're both very bright people and just felt like we are going to rock this. And so when things started going off the rails a bit, and by that I mean, just a lot of feedback from schools, several variety of preschools that we went through, and then getting a lot of those notes from teachers and requests for after school meetings and things. We just were starting to like realize, okay, what's going on here? What are we not doing right? And there was one school in particular where my kiddo spent kindergarten and half of first grade, and that breakup was not a good one. It was really painful. I felt not compassionate, and it was very much focused on this idea that there is something wrong here. Your child, blah, 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 most intense, like all of these things. And I was like, what are you like? Yeah, my kiddo's intense, but my kiddo is also all of these other things. And there's got to be something going on. There's got to be a way we can support this human. And that message wasn't well received. And I just really started realizing that the way that my child was being perceived in a lot of environments and social situations was always focused on things that people found uncomfortable or they just didn't understand. And it came across like this is a behavioral problem. And that to me felt like I'm screwing up, like I'm a bad parent. And also then I was so concerned about what was my child internalizing from all this feedback from these educators or coaches or whoever it was. And so I kind of knew deep down, I'm like, no, this is not okay. There's nothing wrong with my child, but it's rather, you know, environments and situations. And I will say, it's not like I decided one day. I had to like unlearn and unpack all of these ideas I had too, because I grew up in a very authoritarian household and, you know, that there's one way to do things and compliance is a good thing and well-behaved children is the goal, all this stuff. So I had to always be like unlearning that. But the more I really got curious about what was going on and just really listened to my gut about guidance I was getting that seemed to be highlighting problems instead of focusing on what I knew were incredible strengths, that's when I started realizing, no, this isn't okay. I want to kind of try to change the conversation.
That resonates very deeply with me because my son started internalizing the redirection as I'm a bad kid. And that was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I write about that in my book, Differently Wired, that moment when my kiddo, you know, apologized for something that didn't deserve an apology. I was like, why? There's nothing to be sorry for. You didn't do anything wrong. And Ash said to me, well, I'm just so used to it. I had to apologize all the time in school. And that was heartbreaking for me to hear, you know.
Yeah.
And when I probed and asked a little more, it was like, well, yeah, because of my ADHD, for everything that I did wrong in classrooms. And that's still something that we're working to unpack.
Yeah. I'm secretly trying to drop self esteem boosting quotes in our day, just to build him back up because I feel like for so long he was torn down indirectly. I don't think anyone did it directly, but it's like, I'm just trying to drop in a little, hey, you're a great leader, or, something just to get us back
Yeah.
on the you're amazing instead of you're a bad kid track.
Yeah. Yeah. It's ongoing work, I think, right?
Yeah. So tilt parenting isn't just a resource, it's kind of like a rebellion. So I feel like I would love to know your top mission statement, maybe a worthy gripe about how the world treats families like ours outside of the negative redirection.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I've never heard it described as a rebellion. I love that. I definitely, when I spent a year kind of developing what would be tilt, and I actually took a program, did a year-long program with someone who had studied social change movements in history and revolutions and what made those successful and really resonate with people. And I was like, oh, that's what I'm building. This is a revolution. So I really was thoughtful about the language I used and making sure that people could see themselves in this bigger mission. And the original mission, it's still the same, but when I launched Tilt in 2016, it was, this is a revolution to change the paradigm for parents raising what I called then differently wired kids, because neurodivergent as a term wasn't even being used the way it is today. And so I really wanted to like rally the troops and say, like, this whole thing has to change. Like the whole paradigm has to change. We have to change the way our kids are seen. We have to change the way our kids are supported. And that means we as parents have to change the way that we view parenting and what we think it's supposed to look like. And we need to stop buying into this culture of, again, the compliance based or focusing on deficits, or there's a problem in need of fixing, or there is one way to be, right? There's
Yeah.
a normal way. And so that's that was the original mission statement. And it's interesting now looking back again, almost 10 years later, the world has changed a lot, which is cool. And I like to think Tilt had something to do with that. But now, again, neurodivergence, you Google neurodivergence, you'll see like millions of results. It's language that's used everywhere, which is great. So there's more awareness and I think more understanding. And I feel like parents with younger kids, they're starting at such a different place than I was back when I had a 4, 5, 6-year-old kid who we were just like, what's going on here? So that has changed, but the mission really hasn't changed because we're still up against the same systems, right? That we have to engage with the insurance systems. It's still hard to get good information or therapy or supports. It's still really hard to figure out an educational path. Like the systems and that we have to engage with they're so behind and they're moving slowly. So I think the bigger mission is still ultimately the same. And my work is always focused on the parent experience as opposed to like, here's what your kid needs. Here's the strategy for your kid. It's more, no, here's how we need to change our thinking so we can show up for these kids.
Yeah. Ooh, that's so good because I took the Holy Grail, the behavioral parent therapy, and I thought they were going to, tell me how to change my kid, and they spent 12 weeks completely changing me. So I agree with that wholeheartedly. I was like, oh, so it's a me thing. It's actually not my kid. It's how I'm responding.
Yeah. I know. It's powerful, right? But it's not, it requires a willingness to look at ourselves, and that's hard for a lot of people. Because first you got to stop and realize, something else needs to happen here.
So looking back on almost 10 years of being in this space, if you had any game-changing parenting advice other than working on ourselves first, what would it be? When you're parenting a child with ADHD or executive function challenges, there is no simple manual. It's hard to know, am I supporting or enabling? How do I set boundaries that build independence and accountability? How do I create consequences that teach and not just punish? World-renowned ADHD specialist Cindy Goldrich is a mental health counselor and founder of PTS Coaching. Cindy and her team of expert coaches teach strategies grounded in brain science and delivered with deep compassion. They help parents move from frustration and confusion to clarity and connection. Because ADHD isn't just about attention. It impacts motivation, emotional regulation, problem solving, and it affects the whole dang family. If you're ready to stop walking on eggshells and start building calm, connected relationships, reach out to ptscoaching.com or check them out in the show notes. If you've got a complex kid and want support that actually helps, this is a great place to start.
Oh my gosh. Where do I start? No, I would say a couple of things that weren't even really available back again when I was earlier on is, first of all, the language of co-regulation. That has been that's changed everything, right? I wrote about it in Differently Wired as more kind of understanding how our energy impacts our kids' energy. So I knew it was a thing, but co-regulation and the fact that when we can respond with calm, that it can really change everything. It can change the difficult behavior. It can foster deeper connection. Like that to me, I think is the biggest, most powerful tool in our toolbox. And the second thing is just this idea of what we know about nervous systems now, right? So polyvagal theory, I just interviewed Dr. Stephen Porges, who founded or created the polyvagal theory back in the 90s. And it is completely game changing. And so to look at our kids' dysregulation, we know that behavior is communication. If we look at their dysregulation as really a nervous system that is activated that would have, for me, would have changed everything, and Dr. Mona Delahook, who wrote two of my favorite books in this space, Brain Body Parenting and Beyond Behavior, one of the things she said to me when I had her on my show was this question of asking to ourselves when a child is dysregulated, saying, oh gosh, I wonder what their nervous system needs right now. And so just to look at a dysregulated kiddo and think, wow, their nervous system is really activated right now. I wonder what it needs to come back down to calm. It takes judgment away. It takes choice. This is a choice, or they have these skills and they're choosing to manipulate or do this on purpose. It takes all of that off the table. And you can just look that this is a human who is in need of some support and some strategies to come back down and get out of a state of threat. Those things are profoundly game changing. And I'm so excited because the earlier the parents can really start incorporating those ideas into the way they respond to a really intense or spirited or tricky kiddo, it's going to prevent us from going down a road where we're going to have to want to do a lot of repairing, right? Because we've made all these punishment choices or other choices to try to get behavior in line.
I love that so much. I am very new to all of the nervous system regulation, but that makes a lot of sense to not worry about whatever is happening, just worry about what we need to do to get to baseline and then move forward. I like that.
Yeah. And I think, when I was the parent of a really young child who was dysregulated, I knew that I didn't want to escalate things. I knew enough not to try to talk about it in the moment or to try to, fix it in the moment. I knew that was a recipe for disaster, but I didn't know I didn't know why things were going on, and I didn't know how to truly regulate. I could go to my happy place in my mind to try to not get triggered, but I didn't know that I could just actually be with a dysregulated kid and breathe and keep myself grounded and calm, and that would actually be the greatest gift I could give this child. I wish I knew that. I would go back and do it all over again.
Yeah. Through a series of some unfortunate, some fortunate events, my kid has started calling me the calm mom, which I 100% appreciate because that's not my natural disposition. So when other parents say, how do you do it? I don't know how to tell them it's years of self-work.
Mm-hmm.
You really have to work on you because most people are not open to receive that. When you say, how do you become a better parent? You're like, well, you work on yourself, and they're like, what else you got?
Well, it's not fast enough, right? Everyone is looking for the quick fix, especially the more intense or, tricky or complex or perplexing a child's behavior is. We want it fixed because it can be incredibly disruptive. It can put our families into crisis mode if we're just cycling around and just spiraling out of control. So I get it. I wanted that too. And we are playing the longest possible game, but I'm in a different place now again with this young adult, and I can now really see wow, I have been playing the longest game and I can see the other side of it. And on top of that, it just feels so much better. It's when you are willing to make that pivot and realize, okay, what can I control here? How can I better show up? If we are willing to do that, it genuinely is a more calming experience. It's a more fulfilling experience to parent, no matter what is going on with our kids. So it's worth it, but it does involve a lot of unlearning because it's not the norm and it's not going to fix anything really in a quick way. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious. You mentioned how different neurodiversity is in mainstream now from 10 years ago. What do you think we're getting better in ADHD parenting now than we were Not even just 10 years ago, just in the past. What are we doing better than we used to do?
And I think both with ADHD and with autism, I think there's just a better understanding of what it looks like and how it can present. We know, especially with girls, that it can look very different. And so there are a lot of women, I also now realize that I'm like so massively ADHD, and I was like the last person to know.
Yeah.
Even as I'm like building all this stuff for parents to help their kids, I'm like, I never looked in the mirror. And so I think that is a big change. Um, I think, and similarly in the autism space, there's just like a much deeper awareness and understanding. There was something else I was going to mention and I lost my train of thought. Can you repeat the question for me? Maybe it'll come back
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah. Not even just the like decade that you've been in this space, but what do you think we're getting better in ADHD parenting in 2025?
Yeah, I think we're also just realizing that, executive function is such a big piece of that. That is something a lot of people are aware of. I think the understanding of twice exceptionality. And so really bright people can really mask those symptoms or, the challenges. And so I think we just have a much better understanding in general about how prevalent it is, how it shows up, and also the fact that it can co-occur with other things. That's a new thing too. Like, when my kiddo was initially identified with both ADHD and autism, it was like, well, actually, you can't have both. So, that very first diagnosis was ADHD plus something called PDD-NOS, pervasive developmental disorder, not otherwise specified. Well, now we know that, ADHD and autism, and it's called ADHD, and it's like everywhere. And so that is exciting to me because I think just in general, while I think it's important to have specific identifications if you need support in those areas, because how you might treat anxiety associated with autism versus ADHD versus just anxiety will look different. So that's really helpful, but it is great to see that there's a lot more nuance and understanding about how these things kind of overlap. And it just provides, I think, the possibility for more people to get the kind of support that they would really need.
Yeah. As you can tell, I am a Southern gal from the foothills of North Carolina. And I mean, not to say that we're progressively moving forward here, but it's kind of like I can hear the narrative changing from they're just hyperactive boys being boys to, okay, something's going on here. How do I help my kid? And I'm really, really proud of that.
Yeah.
Even if it's just a small shift, I think we're shifting, and that's really nice to see.
Yeah, I agree. It's exciting. I mean, it's definitely moving in the right direction.
Yeah. Now I want to talk about your podcast because I believe you're 600 plus episodes in. Did I read that right?
Yes. Some of them are some, repurposing of some older episodes. So it's 462 original episodes. That's where I'm at. Yeah.
Wow. Still very impressive. I know you've mentioned a couple of guests already. I'm wondering which episode possibly still gives you goosebumps.
That's such a good question. Gosh, how do I even answer that? I mean, I will just say when I launched Tilt, this is the long answer because I always provide too much context. Perhaps you're familiar with that same phenomenon, but when I first launched the podcast, I had like I was a nobody in this space. I had like my husband and my sister and my mom were like the only people in my Facebook group like page, right? Like, and I had like a half a dozen friends that I asked to listen to my first 3 episodes. So, and it was 2016. So it was just a different time. And I had a list of all of my dream guests that I wanted to have on the show. It was like, I'm going to have Dr. Ross Green in the show and Dr. Dan Siegel and all of these people. And Steve Silberman, who wrote Neurotribes, who, sadly passed away last year, like interviewing him was one of the greatest joys. He's an incredible human. And actually, Ash and I got to have lunch with him, a couple of years ago in New York. And that was just like, that was my fangirl moment. And he was just the most genuine. Like that still really sticks out to me, that conversation. But there are so many people that I've gotten to, that I'm like, I can't believe I can like reach out to this person and they'll come on my show, and to get to ask those people like the questions I really wanted or still want answers to. So Ross Green
Yeah.
is a favorite for sure. Tina Payne Bryson, who has co-written a lot of books with Dan Siegel, like The Whole Brain Child and The Power of Showing Up. She's become a close friend, but I've actually listened to one of my episodes with her multiple times because I continue to get things out of it.
Yeah.
So there's too many to name, but I will say that, and I did just have a chance to interview Dr. Stephen Porges, which for me was like a huge deal as the founder of polyvagal theory. So I was definitely like well prepared for that conversation. And I absolutely loved it. He was a delight and so generous and humble and just so driven to make sure that his research can be applied in practical ways to change people's lives. And that was wonderful.
This is not a secret on this podcast. I feel like I'm getting paid to be a better mom, and I'm in some type of cheat code for my life because this is my job. And every day I talk to people who help me be a better mom.
Yeah.
So podcasting has been amazing.
It's amazing. And I will say, I have a community. It's called the Differently Wired Club, and it's also now 6 years old. And I had a call last night, an office hour call. So it was a very small community on this call. I was in my pajamas. It was like 9 at night here. And we just had the best conversation. And I got off that call, went downstairs and talked to my husband. I'm like, I was so energized. And I was like, I'm so glad that I created like a community of people for me to hang out with. Like, how great is that?
Definitely like mind blowing for me. And as you said, you've gone back to one episode and listened to it over and over. Sometimes when I'm putting socials out there and I'm going back and listening to the episode, it's like mind blowing over and over and over at the little reminders that I still need as a ADHD mom of a 10-year-old kiddo.
Yeah. And every time you listen to it, you're a different person, right? And your kid is a different person. So that's why I did a couple of years ago, I started sharing again, because I have such a deep archive. I started sharing episodes on Fridays that were from the library. But I was like, even if you've heard this one, you will get something completely different from it when you listen to it again.
Yeah.
And that's a cool thing. Like, especially in our space, we're having so many conversations. There's no way we could like hold on to every nugget and perfectly apply it to our lives. So repetition, as they say, is the key to mastery. So
yeah, for sure. I know you can't pinpoint one guest as the goosebump moment, but was there a mic drop on parenting advice that you still think about from your interviews?
The one that just popped into my mind it was still related to polyvagal and co-regulation. I interviewed Deb Dana, who is amazing. She is someone who is known as translating polyvagal for the everyday person, right? Because it can be pretty like high level neuroscience stuff. And we were living in New York City at the time, and she talked about the fact that we are always co-regulating with everyone around us, whether we want to or not. And I was like, oh, so when my kid and I are on the F train in Brooklyn, like on a packed subway, she's like, oh yeah, all those nervous systems are communicating with each other. And it just really made me think so differently about the sensory load, the nervous system load for someone who has a nervous system that's more wired for threat to be in certain environments. And just, it made me really realize how even that ask of like taking the subway to school, like what a big ask that was, and the toll that it can take on people. So yeah, that's what came to mind when you said that. It's something I still think a lot about.
So you've mentioned polyvagal multiple times. Selfishly, not even related to the topic today, is there a regulation technique that you've learned that helps you more than others that you wouldn't mind sharing?
I mean, I think I've just learned how to, I don't know if it's like even a technique. I've had to learn how to, in the face of dysregulation, to to not go into my head, right? Because my head will start spinning and I'll start like making what's happening now, like I'll already be thinking what this means 15 years in the future within like a matter of seconds. And then I get triggered. My fear and anxiety gets triggered. And then I clearly can't respond in any way. I'm just not going to show up as my best self. So one of the things that I've learned to do is to like, even just, and I learned this through my therapist, is just like, you know, squeeze my arms, squeeze my shoulders, maybe, you know, put my feet on the ground, squeeze my knees, just to kind of get myself back in my body. And if I am like on the receiving end of intense dysregulation and I don't want to jump into the metaphorical pool, I also will kind of turn and pivot my body. So I'm still there. I'm still like present, but I'm not like this open vessel that's just going to keep taking in all of the feedback. So those are things that I've been having to practice, and I've gotten better at it. The more you do this stuff, the easier and more instinctual it gets.
Is your next step on the ADHD parenting journey treatment, but you're feeling a little apprehensive? You, my friend, are not alone. So many of us want options that are science-backed and parent-approved. Meet Dr. Richard Bowles, geneticist, ADHD dad, and creator of NeuroNeeds. When his own son was struggling, he created a powerful, all-natural supplement that helped his son get off stimulant meds completely and thrive all the way to college. It's called NeuroNeeds, and it's packed with exactly what ADHD brains need to function, focus, and regulate without the side effects. If you're curious, hit the link in the show notes to check it out. And don't forget to sign up for our newsletter while you're there, because right now, NeuroNeeds is doing us a solid by giving away a free brain bundle, and all you have to do to be considered is to sign up for the newsletter. Because you deserve science you can trust and support you can feel. Yeah. Thank you for that. I'm going to try to remember that for homework time this evening so that I can be regulated.
We have lots of opportunities to practice. That's the good news.
Yes. Weirdly enough, I've struggled with patience all of my life, and now I am the mom of an ADHD kiddo, so I get to work on my patience for the rest of my life.
Indeed.
You mentioned your book, Differently Wired, which, I mean, it's an icon at this point. We're moving in your icon phase. It's the manual we didn't know that we needed. What story or page from that should parents skip to when tiny panic sets in?
Wow. Oh, that's another tough question. I mean, the way that sorry, once again, I'm going to over contextualize my answer, but
Please, I love it.
the way that I structured it was like half revolution, right? Half like, here's the story. Here's why this isn't okay. Here's why everything needs to change. And then the majority of the book are tilts where I share, you know, these little shifts, micro shifts that we can make in the way we think and show up to parents, show up to parenting. So, I mean, I would say, and I will say one more piece of context is like, it wasn't really understood. Like when my agent was pitching the book, people didn't get it because it's like, what? Like, this isn't the typical structure for a book. And I was like, just stick with me here, you know? But I would say one answer would be like the first chapter, which is where I share my story of kind of realizing this is not the parenting path I imagined. And, you know, I share in detail about the messy breakups we had with multiple schools and all of that. And that, for a lot of parents, when they start with that, and actually that chapter's a free download on my website if people want to read it, but it is something I still get emails from people who've like, this is the first time I saw my story represented, and just feeling like, okay, it's not just me, is really powerful. So that, if you're feeling like isolated and alone and this is too hard, that's where I would start. And the other one I'm thinking of is I don't remember what the tilt is called, but it's all about leaning into who your child is. And it's about acceptance and surrendering to what is. And I think that's really, I think they're all really important, but that one is popping up for me because I think we feel like we have to do this right. And if we don't do it right, we're screwing up our kids, we're failing at parenting. And so we're kind of working towards this state of blissful acceptance where nothing bothers us, and no one's going to reach that because it doesn't exist. And so that tilt is really about actually acceptance is an action, it's not a destination. And so when we can do that, when we can realize, oh, this is like a choice I'm doing every day to show up for myself, to do this work, to lean into discomfort, and I'm going to mess it up every single day, but I'm going to show up again the next day. And when we can do that, we can then be less judgmental of ourselves. We can be kinder. That allows us to show up better. So it is really one of those reframes, I think, that can have a profound impact.
For sure. I think that most of my parenting issues are the shoulds in my head and not what's actually happening.
Yep. Our minds are dangerous things, as I like to say. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So in your book, you've beautifully laid out the tilts. I'm wondering which one is your spirit animal in parenting?
Oh gosh. I mean, they kind of all are in some ways. Let me think. Yeah, so I do think that they always change. And I think there's like all of these, if people interview me or want to go through all the tilts, they're like, which is your favorite? I'm like, they're all my favorite. They're all super important. I would say the one related to timelines is always kind of where my biggest work has to be. And it's actually called Let Your Child Be on Their Own Timeline. And I think this is just something that we're always confronted with because, again, we're changing, our kids are changing. As they change and grow, there are different milestones and expectations and societal demands and all of these things. And so this, to me, is where we can just keep showing up with curiosity. I wonder what this is going to look like. I wonder how this is going to unfold. And knowing that there is no one way this has to look, and just always be like peeling off our expectations, our shoulds, all of those things. And, I think it gets more complicated in many ways as our kids get older, because then they're supposed to launch and they're supposed to be, all of these things. And so it really requires, you can't white knuckle this, or you can't fake it. You can't fake being at peace with a kid's unconventional timeline. You have to really believe it, and that is hard. So that to me is the work that I've been doing. And I think it is incredibly powerful when you can really let go and just be curious about what this could look like for our child, and not try to keep fitting them into this subconscious timeline that is, it's just kind of everywhere. We see it everywhere. We see it in our Facebook feeds. We're surrounded by it.
Yeah, I love that. And I think I needed to hear that. And I wanted to tell you a couple of questions back. I think it's super powerful when experts, as I consider you at this point in your journey, for you to say how hard it was. And then there in the end, you're like, my kid's going off to university and it all worked out. And I think that's really powerful. And we need that reminder, it is all going to work out. And I need to be patient and let that happen.
Yeah. I mean, two things I'll say to that. One is we're still in it. It's not like I've reached this, yep, we've got it, we're done. It is ongoing work. It's still, messy. There's scaffolding, there's all of the things. And it's fascinating, and if I think about 2 years ago where our family was, I so wish, Debbie, if 2 years in the future could have come back and said, it's going to be okay. You're going to make it. It's going to be okay. And it's really hard when you're in the middle of hard stuff and it's messy. It is just that fear, that worry. And it's so hard because we don't see a path, because there is no path, because it's so different. And yeah, it's really challenging. But I will say, as long as we stay open and curious to what this could look like, we prioritize our kids feeling as if they know themselves well, and we prioritize showing up as guides who really respect and prioritize seeing our children, that's what's going to ultimately lead them to kind of being their best selves.
I needed that reminder. My kiddo's in 5th grade, and we're only like week 2 in school, and I'm already like, oh my God, are we going to make it to middle school? Yeah. So I have 180 days to simmer down and chill.
And I get it. I've been there like every year practically. And
yeah,
I mean, I homeschooled for 6 years. So that, with each year, I let go more and more of what I thought this was supposed to look like. And and your kiddo is going to keep growing and surprising you in incredible ways. And that's going to also give you a lot of counter evidence that you can like tell that voice in your head, like, it's okay. We got some proof over here, and you're just going to, there'll be a lot of internal negotiations, I imagine.
I feel like I should have you on for a part 2 just about your homeschooling adventure, because that's a hot topic these days.
Yeah. I still can't believe I did that. In some ways, I'm like, wow, how did I do that? I'll just say like that I was a reluctant homeschooler. We started in 3rd grade, and it wasn't part of my plan ever to homeschool. And by the time we stopped in 8th grade, I felt truly like what a gift it was, and an honor to have that experience with my child and how it strengthened our relationship. And I'm so grateful that I did it, but it took me a while to get there.
Yeah. Another journey.
Yeah, exactly.
So I have ADHD derailed the conversation per usual. I would love for you to come back and tell people about your book club on Differently Wired.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So usually once a year, I run a free book club where I just go through Differently Wired with a group of readers. We meet weekly for 3 or 4 consecutive weeks. And when people join, I send them a workbook so that they can take notes, because I think, with all of this stuff, it's like great to learn it, but actually, how can I apply it to my own life? And so that's what we do. We go through, and it's kind of, I share some inside scoop about the book. We talk about some of the concepts that have changed also, because, the book was written a while ago now. It came out in 2018. And then there's a lot of time for Q&A, and it's in my Zoom. It's in a meeting format, so it's very casual. I may or may not be on my pajamas. And so that is, I'm going to be running it again in fall, probably starting, I believe it's slated to start on October 7th. So I would welcome anyone who wants to join to do that.
Very nice. And of course, I'll link that in the show notes. Are there other ways for our listeners to connect with you?
Yes, I am increasingly in more spaces. So, my podcast, it's now called Full Tilt Parenting, and you can find that anywhere you listen to podcasts, and Spotify, all those places. It's also now on YouTube. So my YouTube channel is called Full Tilt Parenting. And if you just go to tiltparenting.com, there are a lot of free resources on there as well. And I'm flirting with starting a Substack, but I don't have an update on that yet. We'll see if I get around to that. But I like the idea of having a Substack.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, stay tuned.
Okay. And I'll link all of those in the show notes. Debbie, this has been better than I could have imagined. I'm very proud of myself for not selfishly asking all of my personal ADHD parenting questions. But I will ask one. I always ask guests to drop some last minute wisdom or helpful encouragement for the ADHD parents struggling right now. And selfishly, that always ends up being what I needed to hear. So if you have any last parting advice.
I mean, two things. One thing that I always share as a last bit of advice is to just remember that there's nothing wrong with your kids. Like there's nothing about them that needs to be fixed, that they're not broken, and that you as a parent absolutely have what it takes to be the parent that they need. And then just to touch upon the ADHD piece for parents who have ADHD, I mean, I think, leaning into that and modeling your own discovery or hacks or tools, and that can actually be such a point of connection. I mean, I think in my case, that is really, there's so many more private jokes now, or like just so much more relatability. Like, well, this is how I do. This is why, like, oh yeah, you have to have 3 projects on the weekend too. Yeah. Like that's just how we're wired. Like, I think it can be fun and joyful to really lean into that and to model our own failures and proclivities and weird things that we do, and just kind of talk openly about them. I think it can make for a really fun culture of family neurodivergence.
I love that. And that is the second time I've heard that advice of sharing my coping strategies with my kid. So that message definitely is for me, and I'm going to start working on that.
Awesome. Good.
Thank you so much for your time today. This has been amazing.
Oh, thank you so much for the invitation. It was a fun conversation. You asked me questions I've never heard before, so I really appreciate that.
Oh, thank you. It's lovely to hear. Thank you so much. Okay, Chaos fam, if you're in full back to school mode and wondering what on earth to pack for your sensory seeking, fidget loving, easily distracted kiddo, well, Play Therapy Supply has us covered. We're talking fidgets and sensory tools, discreet classroom friendly options like spiky finger rings, putty, and handheld fidgets that actually help kids focus without becoming a classroom distraction. Calming corner supplies, think weighted lap pads, emotion cards, and sand trays, perfect for teachers or parents building a reset spot. Games and activities, social skills, card decks, conversation starters, and therapeutic games that sneak in learning while your child just thinks they're having fun. And yes, they've got the classic therapy staples from sand and miniatures to art supplies, all designed for both classrooms and home use. Basically, it's your one-stop shop for tools that help kids self-regulate, connect, and thrive during the chaotic back-to-school season. So, head on over to playtherapysupply.com and check out their back-to-school essentials, and a huge thanks to Play Therapy Supply for making this school year a little less overwhelming for all of us. And that's a wrap on today's episode of Chaos and Caffeine. I don't know about you, but every time I talk to Debbie, I feel like I need to grab a notebook, a highlighter, and maybe a weighted blanket because the mix of wisdom and validation, is good. She has this magical way of making us feel less like we're screwing it all up and more like, hey, maybe our kids are exactly who they're supposed to be. Now for the part you've all been waiting for. If you would like to read Differently Wired with her in a group setting in October, you can find the link in the show notes so you can join. Seriously, you don't want to miss it. It's probably the game changer we've been waiting for. Until next time, may your coffee be strong, your patience so much stronger, and your Wi-Fi never go out during homework hour. I'll see you back here on Chaos and Caffeine next week, where the coffee and chaos will be the same, but we'll have a new conversation.